I bought my dream home in secret, the one I worked years for, the one I starved and broke myself to afford. And before I could even step inside, my neighbor called, "Strangers are in your house." My heart froze. I pulled up the cameras and there they were, balloons, wine glasses, laughter echoing across the walls I hadn't even touched yet. And at the center, my brother raising a glass like a king in a kingdom I bled for. My family was celebrating inside a house that carried my name, not theirs. That's when I dialed the police. Because that wasn't just trespassing. It was erasure. And I wasn't going to let it happen again. My name is Cassian Drexler. I'm 30, and this is the story of how my own family tried to steal the one thing I built for myself. But before I share my story with you, I'd love to know you're here with me. Drop a simple hi in the comments or let me know where you're watching from. I love to see how far my story can reach. Sometimes just knowing someone is listening makes all the difference. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. And if my story resonates, please subscribe to this channel. Your support means the world. It reminds me that even when family turns their back, there are still people out there who care enough to listen. I stood before the black iron gates of Cedar Lake Estate with the new key pressed tight in my palm. The air smelled of wet leaves and pine, and for a moment I let myself breathe it in, tasting victory. This wasn't just a house. It was every sleepless night, every hour of overtime, every bowl of ramen I'd eaten to save a few dollars. It was the years of living on a hand-me-down couch in a one-bedroom apartment while everyone around me told me I was wasting my life. I closed my eyes, and I could hear their voices again. My father's gruff and certain, "Alder's going places, Cassian. You just dreamed too big." My mother's sigh that always followed, weary, rehearsed. "You need to be realistic. Your brother knows how to succeed. You're not built like him." I had learned to nod, to swallow my anger, to stay quiet while Alder, their golden son, strutted through life believing the sun rose and set for him alone. Those words clung to me through college when I worked 2 jobs and still skipped meals. They haunted me when I sold my car and biked through Minnesota winters just to cut costs. They followed me home after 12-hour shifts when I collapsed onto that sagging couch, dreaming of walls and windows I could one day call my own. And now, standing at the gate, I finally had it. A fortress that was mine alone, tucked by the lake, its white stone walls climbing with ivy. My sanctuary, my proof, my line in the sand. But as I slipped the key into the lock, I couldn't stop my hands from trembling. Not with excitement, but with the weight of doubt pressing in. Because I knew my family too well. Alder had stolen my toys as a kid, my clothes as a teenager, even my ideas as an adult. And each time he'd been praised for it. Each theft, they called it sharing. Each loss, they said I was selfish for resisting. Now I had something bigger than toys or clothes. I had a house, and a voice in the back of my head whispered the question I didn't want to face. If they knew I had this, would they ever let me keep it? I pushed the door open and stepped across the threshold, breathing in the scent of fresh paint and polished wood. For a moment, it was quiet. Just me, my key, and the promise of peace. But then my phone buzzed loud and jarring in the silence. I glanced down at the screen. It was my neighbor, the one who lived across the lake road. I answered, and his voice came sharp, urgent. "Cassian, I don't want to alarm you, but there are people inside your house." My chest went cold. The seed of conflict had just been planted. I froze on the porch, my neighbor's words still ringing in my ear. "People inside my house." My house. What do you mean? I asked, my voice coming out flat. "They've been there all evening. Music kids running around, balloons. Looks like some kind of party." I ended the call with shaking hands and pulled up the security app on my phone. The screen flickered to life and my stomach dropped. There they were. Balloons strung across the living room beams, wine glasses, clinking laughter bouncing off my untouched walls. My hardwood floors I hadn't even walked on, scuffed by shoes that didn't belong. My kitchen counters littered with plates I hadn't set. And at the center of it all stood Alder, tall, grinning, raising his glass like a man christening a palace. His palace. Lyra, his wife, leaned against the marble island with the confidence of ownership, swirling wine like she'd chosen it herself. Their kids darted up the staircase shrieking with joy as though they'd lived there for years. It hit me like a punch. This wasn't just trespassing. It was claiming. It was pretending. It was erasing me before I'd even begun. For a long moment I couldn't move. My body was numb, my head pounding with disbelief. All those years of sacrifice, all those nights alone, and this is what they do, the moment I turn my back. Shock turned to fury, hot and sharp. I could almost taste blood at the back of my throat. My fingers tightened around the phone. My sweat, my blood, my years, turned into the stage for their little party. I pressed the emergency dial, forcing my voice steady when the dispatcher answered. "This is Cassian Drexler. I'm the legal owner of a property on Cedar Lake Drive. There are intruders inside my home." The dispatcher asked calmly, "Do you know the individuals I stared at?" Alder's smug face on the glowing screen, his glass raised high. My voice dropped to a whisper edged with steel. "Yes, I know them. Too well." The call ended and I sat in my car across the street, eyes locked on the live feed. Inside, Alder's laughter filled the halls, a cruel echo of every time he had stolen from me before. But this time I wasn't a boy too small to fight back. This time I had the deed, the key, and the law on my side. As the night pressed in, the red and blue lights finally spilled across the driveway, flashing against the lake's dark surface. The officers stepped out, their silhouettes moving toward the front door. Inside, on my phone screen, I saw sudden movement. Lyra scrambling to hide glasses, the children hushed and pushed upstairs. Alder walked to the door, still wearing that smile that once fooled everyone. But not me. Not anymore. The real confrontation was about to begin. The flashing red and blue lights spilled across the driveway, washing over the white stone walls like a warning. I stayed back, heart hammering, as two officers approached my front door. Inside, on the glowing feed of my phone, I saw Alder straighten his shirt and walk toward them, wearing the kind of smile I knew all too well, the one he'd used his entire life to talk himself out of trouble. The knock on the door echoed through the halls of the house that was supposed to be mine. Alder pulled it open and greeted them, as if he were welcoming guests into his rightful home. "Evening, officers," he said smoothly. "Can I help you?" The officers asked for proof of residence. Alder didn't flinch. He leaned on the doorframe, projecting ease, and said, "This is family property. We've lived here for years." His tone was casual, confident, the words rolling off his tongue as though rehearsed. Behind him, Lyra darted around, sweeping glasses off the counter, hissing at the children to run upstairs. Their laughter cut short. Their footsteps thudded on the stairs until silence replaced it. The house that had been alive with noise moments earlier had gone still, the kind of silence that exposes a lie. I stepped out of the shadows, then folder tucked under my arm, and walked up the driveway. The night air bit at my skin, grounding me as adrenaline surged. Alder's smile faltered when he saw me, but he quickly recovered. "Cassian," he said with mock warmth. "Good to see you." "Officers, this is my brother. Well, he wouldn't have been able to buy this place without me." I clenched the folder tighter. "That's not true," I said, forcing calm into my voice. I handed the documents to one of the officers. Inside was every page, the deed with my signature, the mortgage agreements tied to my credit, the bank statements showing the transfer of my savings. Each page was a record of sacrifice, proof of every sleepless night and double shift. Alder tried again, his voice pitching higher, more defensive. "Ask him where the down payment came from. I lent him the money. Without me, he couldn't have afforded a place like this." The lie stung, even though I had expected it. For a second, I felt 12 years old again, standing in the kitchen while Alder spun some story, and my parents nodded along, eyes fixed on me like I was already guilty. I almost felt the anger claw its way out. Almost. But I forced it down. If I lose my temper now, they'll think I don't deserve this house. If I lose my temper, I lose everything. I met the officer's eyes. Every dollar is mine. I have the statements. I have the loan approval. He has nothing. The officer flipped through the documents, carefully nodding as he scanned the certified stamps and signatures. He closed the folder, handed it back to me, and turned toward Alder. "Sir, unless you can provide proof of ownership, you and your family will need to leave the premises." For the first time, Alder's mask cracked. His grip tightened on the doorframe, knuckles white. Lyra appeared behind him, her voice shrill and brittle. "This is ridiculous. She's lying." I corrected, my voice steady. "And these are the facts. This is my house, not yours, not ours, mine." The officers shifted their weight, one hand resting near his belt. "Do you want them trespassed, sir?" The question hung in the night air like a blade. Alder's eyes locked on mine, daring me to back down. He was betting on shame, counting on me to fold like I always had. My chest ached with the weight of years of silence, of swallowing every insult, every theft. But that night, something in me hardened. "Yes," I said. "Trespass them." The words sliced through the stillness. Alder's mouth opened and closed, his charm dissolving into fury. Lyra hissed curses under her breath, pulling the kids back down the stairs. The officers stepped forward, firm and unyielding, and escorted them out. I stood in the driveway, the cool night air filling my lungs as their car pulled away into the dark. The house, once loud with laughter and clinking glasses, was finally quiet. But I knew that silence wouldn't last. This was only the beginning. The next morning, I sat at my desk at work, trying to lose myself in spreadsheets, trying to pretend my life wasn't already unraveling. The hum of the office filled the space, steady and dull, but my phone buzzed relentlessly beside me. Call after call, missed notifications stacking on top of one another. When I finally picked up, my mother's voice came sharp and scolding before I could even speak. "Cassian, what have you done? You embarrassed your brother in front of the entire neighborhood. Do you have any idea what you've caused?" Her words landed like a familiar blow. Not, "Why was Alder in your house?" Not, "How dare he break in?" Only, "What have you done, Cassian?" Inside, I repeated the same thought I'd carried my whole life. They never ask why he hurts me, only why I fight back. I tried to hold steady. "Mom, it's my house. He had no right to be there." My father's voice cut in, low but firm. That house was meant for family, not for one person to hoard. I gripped the edge of my desk, my knuckles pale. Family doesn't break in. Family doesn't throw parties in a home they didn't earn. There was a pause, then my father sighed. "Your brother called us last night. He told us he lent you the money for the down payment. He said you're hiding it, pretending it's yours alone." The words sank in like ice. So that was it. Alder had been laying the groundwork before I even knew it. He had already spun his version of the story, poisoning the well before I had a chance to speak. "That's a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "I have proof. Every cent came from me. My accounts, my loan, my years of saving. I can show you everything." But my mother's answer was quick-cutting. "We believe Alder. He's always been responsible. You've always chased things too big for you." The old ache returned, the one I thought I'd buried. Suddenly I was back in our childhood home, standing small while Alder was praised for achievements that weren't his, and I was told to stop complaining. Every argument, every injustice, the verdict was always the same. Alder right, Cassian wrong. The office around me blurred. My coworkers laughed somewhere down the hall, oblivious to the weight pressing down on my chest. My house has become a battleground, and once again I'm shoved into the role of the child who doesn't matter, the one who isn't believed. I swallowed hard, forcing down the lump in my throat. "If the truth isn't enough for you," I whispered into the receiver, "then I'll let the law decide." I ended the call, set the phone down, and realized my hands were trembling. Not from fear, from resolve. The battle wasn't over. It had just changed fields. And this time I was ready. The elevator doors slid open, and as I stepped into the lobby of my office, I froze. Alder was already there, leaning against the front desk with a smile stretched across his face like he owned the place. He spoke to the receptionist with practiced charm, introducing himself as my brother, insisting he needed to speak with me privately. I felt the eyes of my coworkers flicker toward me, curiosity sparking. I clenched my jaw, walked over, and motioned for him to follow me without a word. He trailed behind me with the swagger of someone who believed he was in control of every room he entered. Inside a small conference room, I shut the door. Alder slid into a chair, stretching back like he had all the time in the world. "Cassian," he said with a voice sweetened to syrup, "you can't keep that house for yourself. It's too big, too expensive, too much for one man. Why not make it a home for all of us, a family place where we all belong?" I laughed under my breath, bitter and sharp. A family home. Is that what you call barging in and throwing a party as if you already owned it? The sweetness dropped from his voice, replaced by steel. If you don't agree, everyone will turn against you. Mom, Dad, the relatives, they'll see you for what you are. Selfish, ungrateful. I sat back, watching him weave his web the same way he always had. This time, though, I was armed. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You forget I can make this ugly. You want me to tell them you used my money for that down payment? I can put it out there. People will believe me. They always do. And I'll make sure everyone knows it." I let his words hang in the air, then reached into my bag and laid a folder onto the table. I slid it toward him. Inside were the signed mortgage agreements, the deed stamped with my name, and the police report from the night he was escorted out. He didn't touch it, but I saw the flicker in his eyes as the weight of it landed. "You went that far?" he asked, the confidence draining for the first time. "I had to," I replied evenly. "Because you've been building your story since the beginning. But this is the truth. And the truth is heavier than your lies." His teeth clenched and his hands curled into fists on the table. "If this goes public, Cassian, it'll ruin everything. Mom and Dad's reputation, mine. Do you really want to be the one to burn down the family?" I leaned forward, meeting his eyes without flinching. If the truth burns down the family, then maybe the family was never built on anything real. For a long beat, we just stared at each other, the hum of the building's ventilation the only sound between us. Then Alder shoved back his chair so hard it rattled against the wall. He stormed toward the door, and before slamming it shut behind him, he spat over his shoulder. "You'll regret this. Families don't lose to traitors. They'll choose me. They always do." The door shook in its frame as it slammed. I sat there in the silence, chest heaving, my pulse racing. He thought this was only about a house. But I knew now this was about something larger, about who had the right to claim the story of our family, and who would be erased from it. It was a Tuesday night when the message came. A coworker sent me a screenshot with a short note. "You should see this. They're talking about you." I opened it, and there it was, Alder's latest performance. A photograph of him, Lyra, and their 2 children squeezed into their cramped rental living room, all huddled together. The caption read, "Some people hoard everything for themselves while their own blood suffers. Family should mean sharing, but not everyone sees it that way." Within minutes, I saw the comments flood in. Old friends from our hometown chimed in. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years added their voices. Even colleagues who should have known better murmured agreement. How selfish. Imagine having so much and not helping your family. Shameful. Each word chipped away sharper than the last. Then I scrolled further, and the knife twisted deeper. My parents' names appeared, their comments sitting right beneath Alder's. My father had written, "He was always difficult. Alder is right." My mother added, "Family comes first. Alder has always understood that." I stared at the screen, numb at first, then burning. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a wound reopened. Not only were they letting him carve the story, they were handing him the knife. They don't just stand by and watch him lie. They help him drive it deeper. They always have. I closed my eyes, swallowed the anger that threatened to overwhelm me, and did what I had learned to do in the shadows I documented. I took screenshots of every comment, saved the post, backed up the files. I logged into my security system and replayed the footage from that night, capturing Alder's smug toast as he lifted his glass in my living room, celebrating his theft. That evidence was mine now, pages and files that couldn't be erased with another lie. As I was cataloging everything, my phone buzzed again. A message from a number I hadn't seen in months. An old friend wrote, "I know what he's doing, and I believe you. Don't let him corner you. Lies fade, but proof doesn't. Keep it close." For the first time that night, a spark of strength cut through the fog. Not everyone was lost to his story. Not everyone would believe the mask. I sat alone in the half-empty house walls, still bare furniture not yet moved in. The light from the lamp stretched across the polished wood floors, casting long shadows that made the place feel cavernous. Outside, the surface of the lake shimmered with reflections of the streetlights rippling in the wind. I leaned back against the wall folder in hand, the weight of it grounding me. If they want to paint me as the villain, let them. I have what they don't evidence: truth, a record that can't be silenced. And in that moment, I made a vow. If they want to make me the enemy, then I'll let the courts decide who the enemy really is. The war was no longer just within the family. It had spilled into the world, and I was ready to fight it there. It was late on a Sunday afternoon when the pounding started. The knocks weren't polite or patient, they were fists against wood, insistent and heavy. I looked through the peephole and felt the old familiar chill in my chest. Standing on my porch, lined up like they were entering a courtroom, were my parents, Alder and Lyra. Their faces carried the same rehearsed calm I had seen my whole life, but their eyes betrayed the storm underneath. I opened the door only halfway, keeping my body in the frame. My father stepped forward, first voice dripping with honey. "Cassie and son, this doesn't need to be ugly. This house could be a home for all of us. Think about it. A place for family gatherings, holidays, a true family legacy. Don't turn this into a fight." Before I could respond, Lyra cut in sharply. "You don't have a wife, you don't have children. This house is too much for you alone. We need it more than you. Alder's kids deserve space to grow. What kind of brother would you be to deny them that I held their gaze, saying nothing because I had learned that silence often said more than words?" That was when Alder reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He smoothed it out on his hand, showing me bold handwriting across the page. "Here's the agreement. Sign this and you'll avoid lawyers' courts, the embarrassment of dragging this family name through mud. You keep half, we take half. Simple." The paper shook slightly between his fingers, not from nerves, but from arrogance, like he had already decided I would surrender. I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed record. Holding it up, I said clearly, "Everything you've just demanded is being recorded." The color drained from their faces in unison. My father stiffened, my mother's lips parted in panic, Alder's jaw clenched. Lyra's eyes darted to the phone like it was a weapon, and in a way it was. My father's voice hardened, stripped of the syrup. "If you don't sign, if you keep choosing this path, then you're no son of ours. We'll cut you off. You'll be alone." Alone. The word used to terrify me. As a boy, being cut off meant punishment, silence, shame. But standing there in the doorway of the house I had built for myself, I realized something new. To be their son meant to be sacrificed for Alder. To be loved meant to be erased. I straightened my back, my hand still steady around the phone. Then I guess I'll be alone. Because I will not give this house up. Not to him. Not to you. The moment stretched like glass about to shatter. My mother's eyes brimmed with something like tears, but not regret, frustration. Alder stepped forward, fury etched into his features, but I closed the door slowly, firmly, until the latch clicked. Through the window, I watched them retreat, shoulders stiff, Alder gesturing angrily as they walked down the driveway. They had come to break me, to pull me back into the old role. Instead, I had ended the conversation on my terms. For the first time, I understood the battle was no longer a shadow war. It was out in the open now, and there was no turning back. The morning of the hearing, I stood on the courthouse steps with a folder pressed against my chest. It was heavy not just with paper, but with every hour of work, every sacrifice, every insult I had swallowed to make this dream real. Inside were the mortgage papers, the deed stamped with my name, the police report from that night, the screenshots of Alder's posts, the saved footage from the security cameras. My arsenal. The courtroom smelled faintly of wood polish and dust. My family sat on the opposite side, dressed in their finest. Alder wore a sharp suit, his hair slicked back, his expression cool and confident. Lyra sat stiff beside him, arms crossed, eyes cutting toward me with disdain. My parents avoided my eyes altogether, their faces carved into stone. The judge entered and the session began. Alder's lawyer was quick to raise his voice, smooth and practiced. Your Honor, this house was not solely purchased by my client's brother. It was funded with family resources with my client's financial support. Cassian Drexler simply signed the paperwork as a formality. The true intent was always for it to serve as a family home. I stood when it was my turn, my heart pounding but my voice steady. Every cent came from me, every paycheck, every wire transfer, every loan tied to my name. I lived on scraps to make this happen. I have the documents and I have the evidence. I handed the folder to the clerk. The judge flipped through, nodding occasionally, then gestured for the projector to be set up. My chest tightened as the footage from my security camera filled the courtroom screen. There was Alder Glass raised, standing in my living room. His voice filled the room. Here's to us. Finally moving up in the world. The courtroom stirred. Murmurs rippled through the benches. Alder's lawyer tried to wave it off. That was clearly a joke, a casual toast taken out of context. But I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone and played another recording, the one from my doorstep just days earlier. On the speakers, Alder's voice rang clear, reading from the paper demanding I sign over half the house while my parents threatened to disown me. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother's face crumpled. My father looked away. Alder's mask cracked into anger. Lyra muttered under her breath, gripping the edge of the table. The judge tapped his gavel, once the sound echoing through the chamber. The evidence is conclusive. Cedar Lake Estate is the sole and lawful property of Cassian Drexler. All claims to the contrary are dismissed. The words landed like thunder. Relief surged through me, mingled with something heavier, vindication. I sat back down, chest rising and falling as if I had just run miles. Across the room, Alder glared, his jaw tight, but for the first time he had no words, no stories to spin. This fight had never been just about walls and a roof. It had been about a lifetime of being silenced, a lifetime of being overshadowed. And now, in front of strangers who could see through the lies, I had taken back not just my house, but my voice. When the gavel struck again to close the session, I knew something had shifted forever. I hadn't only defended my home, I had rewritten the balance of power in my family, and there was no undoing it. The courthouse still echoed in my mind as I walked away, the sound of the gavel sealing more than just a legal decision. By the time I returned to Cedar Lake, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Messages filled the screen, cousins, old friends, even coworkers who had doubted me. I'm sorry I believed him. You were right all along. I can't believe what Alder did. Each note was a strange mix of vindication and bitterness. They only believed me now when the stamp of the court told them to. Without the weight of a judge's word, I would still be the liar, the selfish brother, the problem. I scrolled through them until my eyes blurred. I set the phone down on the counter and let the silence of the house wrap around me. The quiet was heavy, but cleansing, a reminder that this space belonged to me alone. For the first time in weeks, there were no voices but mine. Alder disappeared from the internet almost overnight. His posts vanished, his page scrubbed clean. But I knew it didn't matter. I had every screenshot, every saved copy, every recorded frame. Nothing he erased could erase the truth. 2 days later, a relative I barely kept in touch with sent me an audio file. I hesitated before pressing play, but curiosity won. Alder's voice poured through the speaker, sharp and angry. He was berating my parents for letting things unravel in court, for letting the family's image shatter. He wasn't sorry for trespassing or for lying. He was only sorry he had been caught. It confirmed what I had known deep down. His pride mattered more than any bond we'd ever shared. That evening, as I sat in the living room, the knock at the door came. This time it was quieter, more hesitant. Through the window I saw my parents standing together, shoulders slumped, faces tired. I let them in. My father spoke first. You've won, Cassian. No one can take that from you. But do you understand what you've done? You've brought shame on this family. Everyone is talking. Do you feel proud of that? I steadied myself, every word deliberate. If the family's honor depends on lies, then it deserves to fall. I'd rather stand in truth alone than hide behind your stories. My mother broke then, her voice cracking, eyes wet. We thought Alder needed more from us. We thought you were stronger, that you didn't need the same protection. Maybe we were wrong. Her words hit me harder than I wanted to admit, but I didn't let it show. I had waited my whole life for them to acknowledge the imbalance, but I realized I no longer needed it. I don't want apologies, I said quietly. I just need you to understand. I will never let anyone take what I've built again. Not Alder. Not you. Not anyone. They didn't argue. They didn't defend. They just looked at me defeated, as though something in them had cracked. When they left, I closed the door slowly, leaning my back against the wood. For the first time, my shoulders felt lighter. Not because they had changed, but because I had. The chains that bound me to their approval had fallen away. And with that, I was free. The sun was dipping low when I stepped out onto the porch, the lake blazing with the reflection of a fiery sky. The air was cool, the water rippling with the soft wind. I sat on the steps watching the light stretch across the surface and thought back on the path that had brought me here. I remembered the nights of ramen and bitter coffee, the hours bent over overtime work, the bruises of exhaustion I wore like armor. I remembered signing the papers at the bank, my hand shaking but proud. And I remembered the shock of seeing Alder raising a glass in my living room as if it had always been his. The memories tumbled together as I walked through the house, touching the frames of doors, running my fingers along the fresh paint of the walls. Each room carried an echo. I saw the officers standing at the doorway, saw Alder's practiced smile, heard my parents demanding I sign away half of what I had earned. I felt again the tremor in my hands when the judge declared the house mine and mine alone. My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it and saw a message from my father. Just 4 words. We won't bother you. For the first time, it sounded like the truth. I set the phone down without replying. Silence had more meaning than any response I could send. I looked around at the room, still sparsely furnished but alive with possibility. The quiet no longer felt heavy or lonely. It felt safe, solid. I walked to the panel on the wall and turned off the security cameras. Not because I feared nothing could happen, but because I no longer needed to live in a state of vigilance. I finally trusted that what was mine would remain mine. I stood in the center of the living room and let the calm wash over me. They had tried to turn this house into their playground, to rewrite my life like they always had. But this time I had drawn a line they couldn't cross. This is my declaration, I whispered to myself. I am not the shadow of my family. I am not the afterthought. I am me. As the light faded, I struck a match and lit a single candle on the mantel. Its glow flickered across the white walls, soft and steady. The house no longer felt empty. It felt alive with something new, peace, hard-earned and unshakable. This house wasn't just where I lived. It was proof that I had finally claimed the right to tell my own story, and for the first time I believed that story was truly mine. Sometimes we spend our whole lives believing that family is supposed to define who we are, that their voices are the ones that tell us whether we are worthy of love, respect, or even a place to stand. I believed that for far too long. I let their judgments bury me, I let their favoritism silence me, and I let their needs eclipse everything I worked for. But the day I stepped into Cedar Lake Estate with my own key in my hand, I realized that worth is not handed down by blood. It is built brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, and in my case with every dollar scraped together through nights of exhaustion. My brother tried to take that from me. My parents stood behind him, and for a moment it felt like history repeating itself, like the boy I once was ignored, overshadowed, made invisible, was being dragged back into the present. But this time I didn't stay silent. I chose to fight. I chose to stand in truth, even when it meant being called selfish, even when it meant being alone. And what I discovered is that solitude and honesty is far lighter than companionship built on lies. Now when I walk through my home, I see more than walls and windows. I see a line that will never be crossed again. I see proof that no matter how much someone tries to rewrite your story, you still hold the pen. That lesson has cost me, but it has also freed me. And if you are listening now, if you have ever felt like the black sheep, the one dismissed or doubted, I want you to know your voice matters. Your truth matters. What you build is yours, no matter how loudly others try to claim it. If my story resonates with you, please stay with me. Subscribe to this channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and let me know you're here. Sometimes knowing that someone is listening is the one thing that keeps us standing when the world calls us wrong. Your support reminds me, and maybe reminds you too, that none of us are truly alone in our fight to be heard. Thank you for being here and thank you for listening.